I think I'll
Awesome.
hear you.
Okay. Is it okay? All right. So, what was it like for you during, like, when you first heard about, like, when you first heard of the war started?
When I first heard the war had started, the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. And I was teaching school at that time in a country school in Minnesota.
Okay.
I went to church that Sunday morning with the family I lived with. And the minister had heard it on the radio, so he announced to everybody in church that we were at war.
Wow.
And it made me feel real strange because my boyfriend was from North Dakota, and he was in the service already. He had volunteered for the service. And he was in the state of Washington. And so he called me that night. And he had come to North Dakota to see his parents for Christmas. And he had to turn around and go right back to his base in Washington.
Wow.
Yeah. So I didn't get to see him. And then he asked me to try to come to Washington for my Christmas vacation because we teachers always got 2 weeks vacation at Christmas. School closed for 2 weeks. And so that's what I did
Wow.
because he was alone out there. I went from a school where I was teaching to Warren, Minnesota, which was where my mother was and my sister. And I was sleeping with my mother that night at the home where she was working. And I said, Don wants me to come out to Washington for my Christmas vacation. And she said, well, he's all alone out there. And you are here, you have family here. My sister was living there. She was married at the time. And she said, I'll probably be with them. So he's all alone. Maybe you should go out there. And she had never met him. And so I went to the train depot and bought my ticket. And I went out to the state of Washington to see him because we had planned on marriage. And of course, now that the war was on, he was gung-ho to get married.
Yeah.
I bet.
So was
And
that?
I thought, oh my gosh, I'd have to leave my school. Although I thought maybe they would take me back because at one time they didn't hire married teachers. They just wanted single ones because they thought they could put their full attention to the job and not have a husband to put up with.
So was that Don? Was that Don?
was Don,
Oh, okay.
Carrie's grandpa.
Okay.
And so I wrote a letter to the school board and asked them if it made any difference to them that I would be married. We were going to get married December 27th. And I didn't hear from them. Things were different then. You didn't call each other. It had to go by letter if you wanted to contact somebody. And so I just made up my mind, I will stay here because I don't know when he might get shipped out. So I'll just give up my teaching job and stay here. And I did get a letter after that saying that it was okay that I was married. But in my letter to them again, I told them of a teacher I knew who was not teaching that year and just staying at home, a teacher by Warren.
Tell us how the war affected you. Like, were you guys afraid during wartime? Tell us about how you felt during the war. Were you afraid?
We just knew it was coming. Everybody, I think, had a feeling that war was coming.
Before?
And that's why he had volunteered for the service 1 year sooner, because he knew he just knew that before too long he would be drafted if he didn't. And if he was drafted, the government drafted him, he would have to go wherever they put him. He chose the Air Force. So he said, if I volunteer early, I can choose which service I want. And he chose the Air Force. And so that worked out for him because he had been married, or he had been in the service about close to a year, or over a year when we married. Yeah.
Okay. So was he ever in any danger, do you know? Like,
He was never in combat.
Okay.
For some reason, he had a desk job. They called it materiel or supply work.
Okay.
And that's what he was involved in almost throughout his whole Air Force career.
So did it ever scare you personally, the war? Were you ever scared?
I won't say that I was scared. I pretty much had to take whatever would come, and I knew that I was married to a serviceman, and that he might have to go here and there where I couldn't follow him. And I didn't like that part, but yet I didn't have a home to go back to. Some of the wives who had married didn't like to move from place to place because they missed their homes. But that didn't happen to me because my mother was out working for somebody and I didn't have a home to go to.
So how was it with the rationing and like just your life at home?
Oh yes, almost everything was rationed. Sugar, coffee, cocoa, tires. They didn't even produce enough cars for everybody that wanted a new car. So you had to get in line at some of the automobile dealers to get a car, put your name in. And sometimes you really had to work hard to get a tire if you needed one. There was shortage of soap. I can remember one time we were living in Nebraska at the time, stationed there, and I needed to wash clothes, but I didn't have any laundry soap for washing clothes. So I went to the store and I found some bars of toilet soap. They were all colors, but I bought them because that was the only soap I could get to wash clothes with, and I shaved them off with a knife and made a soap to wash some clothes with.
Wow. Wow. So did you know what Hitler was doing in Germany? Like, did you guys all know?
You mean when the war started there?
Right. Did you know what he was doing? What Hitler was doing during the war?
What my husband was doing?
No, what Hitler was doing.
Oh, we didn't know much about it because you could only get news from the radio. And we didn't seem to have time to listen to the radio too much. And it wasn't like during the Vietnam War. We could see everything on television. Wasn't it all like that? The only news you got was over the radio. And every so often, President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president at the time. And he would give a speech. It was called his Fireside Chats. And if you caught that on the radio, then he kind of told you what was going on. So we knew that England was really having a very hard time fighting. The British were having a hard time fighting Germany on their own. So that much we knew.
Okay. Do you feel like it brought people closer together?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Everybody was ready to help bring victory to our side, to Britain and to America. They wanted wanted to do away with Hitler and Mussolini
Mm-hmm.
in Italy because they had a pact.
Right.
Those two, they were both tyrants.
Right. Do you feel like it brought you closer to God at all?
In my case, no, because I hadn't had religious training. So, no, at that time, I wouldn't say for me. Maybe for some people it did.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, after I had my children, I got involved in church and religion.
Okay.
In the Lutheran
Anybody
faith.
personally who went and fought, or and if they died?
Did you know anybody personally who went and fought, or if they died? Any friends that fought?
Not my personal friends, but people I knew of that lived in my, what I would call my hometown, where I graduated from high school. There were some young men that were killed in World War II from that town. And one mother lost 3 sons in the war. And I don't remember if the government furnished these gold stars for these mothers. They probably did, but they had she had 3 gold stars in her window of her house.
So what part of the war did you feel most affected you?
What part of it? Well, the very beginning, thinking of all these ships that were bombed at Pearl Harbor, that did really affect your emotions, to think that all these men were just surprised, dropped bombs on them and killed them right there. And USS Arizona is still right down there.